Okay, so good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar on emotional intelligence. Today, though it being a Sunday, 6 p.m. in the evening, I welcome my esteemed panel, of course, my speakers over here, Dr. Rashmi Sarkar and Nikit Sir. Uh, and we all know today's topic is very interesting, and it is not a regular you know a scientific kind of a, forum where we are discussing about any kind of dermatological disease or anything of that sort, but we are talking about emotional intelligence. We all know it's become a buzzword in today's times. We all know what is emotional intelligence is the kind of capacity to understand and manage our emotions. A lot of skills are involved in though, like self awareness, self regulation, motivation, social skills, and it is very important in today's time, especially in social studies settings and workplace. So we, of course, we will be talking more about it through Nikit sir, and the question answers that we are going to discuss, and we are going to answer the questions that you have all at the back of your mind. So before that, I would like to introduce the person who had uh, this thing in her mind, that we should have such kind of webinar, which will be very much useful, not only for the corporate but also for all those who are viewing this webinar, for all the doctors around it, around us. So one second, the screen is just freezed. So So, of course, this special webinar is brought to you by Lalikan and Lashil from Glenmark. And yes, I was talking about none other than Professor Dr. Rashmi Sarkar. It was her brainchild to have such a kind of webinar. And I think we are doing this kind of a webinar for the first time. And we do have great speaker on this. But before that, I would like to introduce ma'am. We all know she's a very familiar name in Indian dermatology, but still I would like to reiterate. She's MD PGI from PGI, MNAMS, Professor of Dermatology, Lady Hardinge Medical College, Delhi. She has done her MBBS from DMC Ludhiana, MD PGI Chandigarh, Professor of Dermatology, Lady Hardinge Medical College, as I said before, President IDVL Delhi State Branch 2018, National Secretary IADVL 2014-15, a former Secretary General ASPCR, Chief Founder and President Pigmentary Disorder Society, of course the editor of 14 books, Editor-in-Chief Pigment International, 180 articles, 75 chapters, and she's been invited as speaker at many international conferences, as you could see, including this prestigious annual AAD in 2006, 2011, 2012, 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, and it goes on. Of course, she's been an eminent speaker at WCD, ICD, WCPDs, ASPCRs, and national conferences. Maria Durant Fellow, ISD, awarded by Dr. B.M. Ambadi Oration 2019. Of course, Dr. Madhusudan Das Oration and Economic Times Award. So, ma'am has been awarded by these awards too. Of course, ma'am is founding president, joined WDS, Indian WDS, of course, and of course is a vice president, International Society of Dermatology, international representative, board of directors, WDS 2011 to 14, and of course now 2007 to 2018. Of course, she chairs International Mentorship Committee at IST. So, in short, I would like to say that Dr. Rashmi Sarkar has thought of having such a kind of webinar. And with this, I would hand over the session to Dr. Rashmi Sarkar. And ma'am, could you please take over and introduce Mr. Nikit? Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
So good evening, everyone. And thank you so much, Meenal, for, introducing me, saying such nice things about me. And before I talk a little bit, about, why we set up this program for today. I think it'll be totally in place that first let me introduce the speaker of the day, and that is none other than Mr. Nikit Karajgi. Well, first of all, what should I say about Nikit? The thing is, how do I know Nikit? Nikit to me has been, my friend, my childhood friend and, classmate from school's husband. So that is how my introduction was. And I knew that he was an engineer. In fact, both of them are engineers. They're married to each other. And of course, they had a very interesting, story how they got married. That's another, that would make another part of the webinar. But what I would like to say is that it was later on when I got to know that he's got interested in all these leadership, coaching. And in fact, I had seen one of his talks, somewhere. I think that was a TED talk, isn't it? I think,
Yes.
Nikit. So TED talk and something else. So I am very interested in all this, leadership building and, leadership and resource building. And we've tried to do it because I work, as a committee member for a lot of organizations. I'm naturally interested, whether it's the International Society of Dermatology, whether it is the IADVL, where I have worked, as the secretary, whether it is the Pigmentary Disorder Society or the Indian Women's Derm Association. Ultimately, it's all about people, lots and lots of people, and how we work with each other. So I think I've been very interested in that because I see that these things are done formally abroad, especially in the USA. They do a lot of it in the Women's Derm Society. And we don't really do it here. I'm sure that this is much more common in the corporate world, Corporate world actually does it, but we don't. But even we as, doctors and dermatologists, we do need our soft skills in place. Maybe we've never realized it, but we're going to need it, more and more. And that is when actually I discussed with him, that, Nikit, we need to do something. We need to have a kind of a leadership talk, for the association. So last year, it was more of an experimental basis when, I was the chair of the International Liaison Committee of IADVL, and we wanted to do some activity which is more relevant back home. And so we decided to have a talk by him at our IADVL, Central Council meeting in New Delhi. We invited him over. It was something very new for our association because we have not had these kind of, leadership talks. And he did speak about, managing ourselves in this VUCA world, and he gave very good insights and some very good take-home messages. People do remember some of those take-home messages. And I think we needed more of that because that is, these kind of things, always makes a meeting more relevant. And so, that is about actually, why we decided to have this. And I did talk to him that we're living in very stressful times, that is the COVID times. And we're also living practically in a virtual world. So we first thought of talking about stress management, if you remember. And then we thought that, okay, everybody is talking about stress management. Why not have something different? So we identified emotional intelligence, it's one more domain. So, well, let me introduce him. He's a mechanical engineer. He has a very rich and diverse corporate experience of over a decade in various senior management positions, both India and overseas. He's a business psychologist coach for organizations worldwide. And he has undergone training in the USA in process of selling a change. He is a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming certified by the National Federation of Neuro-Linguistic Psychology, USA. As an entrepreneur, founded Atyasa Consulting Private Limited in Pune, India for contributing to Indian business and people needs. He's actively involved in developing skill sets at the grassroots levels like academic organizations, SMEs and NGOs worldwide. He's also trained and coached well over 200,000 leaders and managers globally in various behavioral and management areas. He has designed and implemented over 120 training titles and OD interventions for organizational scale-up change and transformation, He's also won a large number of awards, and he's a certified coach for Marshall Goldsmith's renowned stakeholder-centered coaching process and 360-degree assessment for coaching on global leaders of future competencies. In short, I would like to say in a nutshell, he's a global leadership coach. That was the way, I identified him. And now I'm going to just talk a little bit, why we chose this topic. I've already told you the background. But as we've written down in my own words, we are living in very uncertain times. And why is that? We are living in uncertainty, and COVID-19 in the future, it's likely going to be around, at least from a year from now, or at least its after effects. So what do we have to do? We need to build on emotional intelligence, which will help us to move through negative feelings, because there are lots and lots of negative feelings. For us, about our practice, the dermatology practice, about our patients, because we are not doing properly what we were doing. And it will also help us in decision making, empathize with our staff, because we have to handle them, our own family, because we are seeing a lot more of our family than we did, colleagues, and battle mental stress. So this in a nutshell was what was it. And frankly speaking, this word emotional intelligence has just come into being. We've heard about it only some time back. We've known of IQ, because IQ is something we're dealing with. We're always dealing with toppers and brilliant people, And AQ, the aggressive quotient, which came in a little later, we heard about that. And I think the new mantra is that you have to have a bit of an aggressive quotient, and you have to be a little street smart. I've even heard that in schools. And finally, EQ is something that I heard, gradually. But I've always been interested what makes a person tick actually. When you're learning an organization, how well are you connected with yourself and with the rest of the people? So again, this is something which is very important. And how is it going to help us in dermatology practice and to be more in touch with ourselves? So I hope you have some very good take-home messages. Over to you, Nikit.
Thank you so much for calling me over. And thank you, Meenal, for that interesting conversation that you triggered off. Next 50 minutes could actually transform a lot of lives here. I know as doctors, you're dealing with very, very difficult situation right now.
So should we stop the screen share actually?
Yeah, you can, surely.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So I'm aware as doctors, you're facing a lot of stress right now dealing with COVID patients, and life has been taxing for you. And I think what Dr. Rashmi did was right, putting this entire work on emotional intelligence. I think they wouldn't have in a better time. So before I get on to emotional intelligence, let me also say, where did my journey of emotional intelligence start? So like Dr. Rashmi was saying, that we live in the world of intelligence, and therefore IQs are very important. Thinking is something that we all focus on. But I realized over a period of time that emotions tend to play far more role in our lives than our thinking process. And actually thinking process is a culprit. And when I moved into this whole area of emotional intelligence, I started spending time with a lot of monks, and especially Tibetan monks. And there's a lot to learn from them. So obviously I was reading up a lot on emotional intelligence from the management perspective, but I was also looking at it from a kind of a spiritual perspective as to what emotional intelligence would actually do. And I think the 50 minutes that you could actually get into this conversation here could actually change your perspective towards this scenario altogether. So like, Meenal said that she aptly described the competencies of emotional intelligence, and I will build on those competencies for sure. So I think the first thing that we have to understand is emotional intelligence is never taught to us. Thinking is taught to us, but emotional intelligence is not taught to us. In fact, as children, we tend to display our emotions and feelings, and we are quite aware of them. But as we grow up, we learn to suppress our emotions, we learn to suppress our feelings, and that's where the whole trouble starts. As doctors, when you're attending to your patients during the COVID time, you will be going through your spikes of emotions every day. And we have people who are organizing this conversation, and they're into sales and marketing. And I think I've been a sales and marketing profession for a long time. And even there are a lot of stresses that we go through. So there is no profession that's free of stress. And that's where this whole idea of emotional intelligence comes in. But I think where I want to start off is emotional intelligence actually differentiates people who become stars. So if you look at most of the leaders who actually do phenomenally well for themselves in life, not only are they intelligent, but they are also very, very competent in terms of the emotional intelligence. But I want to talk about IQ first. Now, if you look at the entire statistics about IQ, the entire world, around 70 to 80% of the world, is spread around the mean when it comes to intelligence. So there's only standard deviation of plus or minus 1 when it comes to emotional intelligence. I mean, primarily to simplify it, if you were to look at any school or a college, 70 to 80% of the students have absolutely similar IQs. And interestingly, people in the hospitals, doctors in the hospitals also would tend to have absolutely similar IQs, though when we move into professional courses, we tend to be on the right hand side of the bell curve, that is a little better in terms of IQ. But again, IQ is practiced. The more wiring starts getting formed, and the IQ develops over a period of time. But EQ is something that starts happening when we go through trouble. Now, I was reading up an interest inwards, and when we say they're turning inwards, they're actually getting into issues like emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence. And I think that's where the whole context of this webinar also seems to be coming through, because we are so stressed out now that we need to deal with these stresses. So I'm going to talk about the first part of emotional intelligence, a competency which is so rare that I find as a practitioner of emotional intelligence. I do assess people on emotional intelligence, and self-awareness is the first competency of emotional intelligence, but it's extremely rare. In fact, I could actually make this blatant statement here that the more intelligent the people are, the lesser they tend to get on their self-awareness. So what is self-awareness? Self-awareness is all about knowing what our passions are. It's about knowing what our sense of purpose is. It's about knowing what our values are. It's about knowing what are our strengths. It's about knowing what are those weaknesses that we are born with and we can't do much about them. It's about knowing where our motivation is, a lot of things. So let me get on to the field of medical sciences. Now, as doctors, when you're dealing with patients, if you're with a sense of purpose, and when you're looking at your profession with a sense of purpose, what's happening? You're no longer treating a particular patient. You're actually very passionate about ensuring that the patient not only recovers, but goes home and remembers you. And you kind of left a story or a legacy behind in that patient's life. And that's what is the whole idea of sense of purpose. In fact, there are a lot of professions which are absolutely driven by sense of purpose. My profession as a coach is driven by sense of purpose, because the whole idea is we have to make our people win. And that's the whole context that we're dealing with. So the first question that you may want to ask yourself is, every time when you enter your hospital, every time when you're dealing with patients, or maybe you go back in your time when you were a part of your medical academics, was it a sense of purpose for you? And if it was a sense of purpose for you, the beauty is that you actually get energized every time you're executing your sense of purpose. Now, as we grow in life, as we go through diverse experience in life, our sense of purpose also tends to evolve. So in our childhood, our sense of purpose is probably we want to have a successful academic career. After that, our sense of purpose becomes that, okay, we want to take on to a profession. Interestingly, after that, we could actually start having a sense of purpose, which could be similar to the profession that we are in, or it's completely different from the profession. So if I have to simplify this entire story of self-purpose, the sense of purpose, I could come to my own career. I mean, Dr. Rashmi introduced me as an engineer, and what is an engineer doing with psychology? And the whole idea of moving into psychology was I suddenly at the age of 32 discovered my sense of purpose. And my sense of purpose seemed to be that I wanted to investigate human behavior and I wanted to move into it. So where does this sense of purpose come from? Well, nobody knows about it. It's a whim. You know, human beings are quite whimsical in nature. So sense of purpose is a whim. And the moment the sense of purpose gets activated in you, you're no longer in a profession. You're actually practicing your hobby. You're actually moving into a space which you are very, very passionate about. What are your values when we talk about sense of purpose? There's certain things that are extremely important to us in our lives. Sometimes professional field is important to us in our lives. Sometimes family is important. Sometimes maybe fame is important. Sometimes helping people is important. So there is nothing about what's right and wrong about values. So it's all about, as we grow, as we are nurtured in the environment, we start looking around and then we start saying, okay, these are certain things that are absolutely important to us or important to me. Now ask yourself, what are those 5 things that are extremely important to you? And those are the 5 things or 5 elements in your life which are actually shaping up all your decisions. Now we live in the COVID times, and in the COVID times, the research also says if there's one thing that's driving people and motivating them, it's their sense of purpose and it's their values. If the value system says that I want to ensure that my patients go back home healthy, then what you're doing is you're prioritizing it. So values is something that is well spoken of in emotional intelligence. The other thing that we talk about in emotional intelligence is our strengths. Now, I've spent a lot of time with doctors, and I realize there are a lot of doctors who are fascinatingly good in terms of forming relationships with their patients. Now, this comes naturally to them. It's their strength. There are some doctors who are extremely good in terms of clinical analysis of what's happening. There are some doctors who are amazing in terms of diagnosis. There are some doctors who are amazing in terms of following a complete process and system. So the line of treatment becomes one thing that comes very naturally to them. If you go back to your college days, there are certain subjects that came absolutely natural to you. These are your strengths. Where do these strengths come from? We're born with them. And why did the nature give us those strengths? Because that nature said that, you know, take these strengths, apply them with your sense of purpose, and you will absolutely contribute to the society around you. So one of the things that we talk about in emotional intelligence is that we are all born to augment the quality of life of people around us. And therefore, this sense of purpose and this entire value system and the experiences that we go through in life, and then the kind of strengths that we start cultivating and inculcating in ourselves, it's all a part of a blueprint. It all just comes together. And I tell you what, if you look at this whole COVID world right now, it's so difficult for everybody that it's actually giving a lot of hard experiences to people. And these hard experiences are actually honing up a lot of strengths that we already have within us. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if a whole lot of you would have discovered certain new strengths in yourself. And that's the beauty of self-awareness. Self-awareness also talks about being in touch with your conscience. You know, conscience is that small voice that we have inside of us. It tells us what's right and what's not right. Conscience and intuition should not be mixed. Conscience is about, you know, telling you the truth. It's an absolute truth. What you're doing is right, or what you're not doing, or what you're doing is not right. And that's the differentiator that the conscience gives you. But the problem with conscience is the moment we stop listening to conscience, the conscience does talk to us, but the voice of the sound starts reducing over a period of time. Haven't we seen a lot of people deviate from integrity in life because of self-awareness? They're just not aware of what their conscience is telling them. So conscience plays a very crucial role. Intuition plays a very crucial role in self-awareness. Now, whenever we talk about emotional intelligence, we also tend to talk about the intuitive capability of people. Now, it's a flash that we have. And a lot of times intuition happens at a point when you're actually not dealing with the problem live, but you are kind of doing something else and you're de-stressing yourself out, but that problem is still lingering around in your brains. And all of a sudden you have a flash, you have an idea, you don't know where it came from. And the problem with this idea is that you could actually forget this idea too fast. So I have a technique that I do. Maybe you can try it out. I carry my phone always, like all of us do. And the moment I have an idea, I just put it in form of a voice recorder in my phone so that when I come to the office, I remember that idea and I execute it. So that's about self-awareness. Now, as a coach, I have realized whenever I have assessed people in organizations, self-awareness is a competency on which people tend to score very low. And because they score very low, most of them tend to feel very lost out, or a lot of them tend to move into these spaces of frustrations and depressions, which are emotions, which we will discuss a little later. So, first competence of emotional intelligence, self-awareness, which is about sense of purpose. It's about our values. It's about our strengths. It's about our conscience. It's about the principles that we practice in life. It's about our intuitive thoughts that we tend to have. The second competency that got discussed in emotional intelligence was self-regulation, which is so important for you as doctors today in the COVID world. You see morbidity all over the place. It's not an easy occasion for sure. I know I have a lot of classmates of mine who become doctors, and when I talk to them, they tell me it's so difficult when somebody dies, somebody that you've been attending to, and that person, when you look at the bed, that bed is empty and there is those thoughts that comes to you. Now, self-regulation primarily in emotional intelligence is about an understanding that emotions will come. Yeah, okay, I'll take all the questions for sure. We'll go through this and I'll pick up questions. Or maybe, Dr. Rashmi, we can do one thing. There's already a question coming. I think best thing would be we pick up a question after every competency that we've discussed. I think that could also be a great idea. We could reinforce the learnings. Yeah, could we do that?
Yeah, we could do that.
Okay, so
do
there's
you
a
want
first
me
question
to?
that come on self-awareness.
Yeah. So because there's a question from Dr. Sujata,
Yes.
how to assess your self-assessment, level, self-awareness levels.
Self-awareness, two ways. I'll give you the simple way first. Self-awareness is all about if you truly know what your passion is and if you truly know what you enjoy doing, you're already self-aware. Don't worry. If you're absolutely clear about what you're doing in life and you're very clear how you start the day and you're very clear end of the day you've arrived at your goals, you're absolutely clear in terms of self-awareness. However, there are certain psychometric inventories which are available, and those inventories also measure you in terms of your self-awareness. But don't get into that. I think you're doctors, and doctors tend to be a lot more aware because you have diversity of experience around you. And I've always believed medical profession is a profession of passion. In fact, when the patient looks at a doctor and when the patient knows that the doctor is passionate about the profession, I think he's healed 50% there only. There's a sense of confidence that you trigger in the patient that don't worry, I'm there in your life and I'm here and you're absolutely going to go back home fine. However, there could be some doctors, and there are always these minorities available everywhere in all professions, who may not be pursuing their passion when it comes to medical field. It could be that somebody told them to become a doctor and they're not too keen on being doctors. I'm sure you would know some people also like that. So there, obviously, what happens is they are not aligned to their sense of purpose. I have seen a lot of doctors actually take on to legal profession and move into forensic sciences. So they suddenly discovered that their passion was there. Their passion was not about going to the hospital and treating people. Well, that so be it. No problems at all. So that's the best way to analyze, to assess whether you are self-aware. So bottom line, if you know what you're doing and if you know why you're doing and you're excited going to your place of work, you're absolutely aligned to your sense of purpose. But if you're not excited going to the place of work, find out where are you excited going to. You could ask yourself this one single question. What is that one thing I would do for free that gives you your sense of purpose? Ask this question to yourself. What is that one thing I would do for free? You got your sense of purpose.
So I think you probably did that, isn't it? Because you changed over,
Yeah, I mean, when I changed over, I asked myself this question, what is it that I want to do? I didn't know I was supposed to ask this question to myself. What is that one thing I would do for free? But I said, what is that one contribution I would like to make to the world? And the answer intuitively came to me, I'd like to make people win. And the moment that happened, I took on to this profession. I was very clear. Was there any other question, Rashmi?
Yeah, I'm just looking. Okay.
Will
yeah.
AI
There's a
erode?
question. There is a question. So
Yeah, please.
this is from Dr. Ramana Rao,
Okay.
thanks for joining us. Can emotions be controlled with self-awareness all the time? There was a question somebody else had also asked, it sent by the phone,
Okay.
that should we actually be embarrassed about showing our emotions? These were kind of two questions, that had come about.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about that when it comes to self-regulation, but I have to respect the question. No, I'm going to respect the question. I'm going to take a cue from there so that our transition also becomes easy. Emotions have been given to us by nature. Emotions, the moment they trigger in your mind, there are so many muscles on the faces. Your doctors, you know how many muscles are there on the faces. But in behavioral sciences, we say that some thousands of muscles on the faces. They immediately start triggering expressions on the face. There is no way you can hide emotions. Should you control emotions? No. Because emotions are energies. And if I go back to my engineering, I learned one thing in thermodynamics. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only be transformed. Now, the only thing you can do about emotions is, if you do not want to exercise that emotion, keep watching it. It will recede over a period of time. But please don't attempt to control your emotions. Convert into toxicity. I will get into those details as I move ahead. I'll park the topic of toxicity right now. But I think a lot of patients who come to you, and chronic patients who come to you in behavioral sciences and in emotional intelligence, we say that they have some baggage in their life, which is now creating a psychosomatic, kind of a situation in their life. And therefore, we will go deeper into emotions. But I think answering the question straight off, please do not control your emotions. At the most, you can witness them, you can watch them. They will subside over a period of time. Any other question?
There's one more question from Dr. Richa Oja Sharma. Thank you, Richa, for joining us, today. And she's asked that, will emotional intelligence erode in the face of virtual engagement rather than real interactions these days? Or are the parameters of emotional intelligence different from the real and virtual world?
So in a virtual world, emotional intelligence has to actually peak, because talking to a camera is not easy. When you talk to a camera, you have to believe that there are people out there to whom you're contributing. And unless and until you have that sense of purpose in your mind when you're talking in front of the camera, your feelings and your thoughts are not going to reach out to people. Unfortunately, what happens, a lot of people struggle to be on the camera, and one of the reasons they struggle to be on the camera is, either they try to be too formal and therefore they control their emotional intelligence, or they just don't empathize with the people who are there, and that could trigger a lot of problems there. So I think in the virtual world, emotional intelligence requires a lot more, because that sense of purpose now has to be transmitted over the digital frame. Now, typically engaging people in the virtual world are the ones who are absolutely driven by sense of purpose. And people who are not able to engage people on the virtual network, well, that's because that power of sense of purpose is not reaching to them. Yes, you had some question?
There's one more question, Nikit, that is by Dr. N.G. Saha. Any risk factors for emotions and how to overcome?
Well, life is extremely uncertain. Emotions will trigger behaviors, emotions will trigger actions. The outcome of the actions will only be known once the action has been implemented. And therefore, anything that you do is always a risk. I remember one of my doctor friends told me, he's a neurosurgeon, and he told me, there is a person of the size of a tumor of a marble in the brain who comes to him and just doesn't do well, and just goes into another world. He just passes off. Whereas there are people who come with a tumor of the size of a cricket ball and they just get healed and they go back home healthy. Risk is all over the place, and your doctors, you're dealing with life. There cannot be more of a risky proposition than life. So we've got to be in the world of risks. Emotions do come with their own risks. Emotions do come with their own challenges. But that's where I think the adventure of life is. That is where the whole learning of life is. We got to take it to the stride. That's the way it goes. So there is a risk.
I think those are the questions. We can just go on. We'll take them.
Let's go to the next competency of emotional intelligence. Doesn't matter if you have another question that triggers in your mind on the same topic. we can look at it. Okay, how about the days? There's one more that's come. There's one more question that's come.
Okay, this is from Neha. How about the days when self-awareness needs recurrent motivation? How to be motivated?
That's the third competency. I will deal with the part of the third
Yeah.
competency, but I have to respect your question and answer it. I'm going to talk about a competency which is self-motivation when we talk about emotional intelligence. So
Yeah.
obviously, when we deal with motivation, we don't borrow motivation from the environment. We're going to look at how do we self-motivate ourselves. Yeah. So that's how we go. And I know during COVID times, even I'm going through COVID times. I'm dealing with organizations because they don't know how to get business during COVID times. And I'm dealing with a huge issue of motivation. And we will surely talk about it as we move ahead. But my first input to you, it's all about self-motivation, because motivation is ours. We've got to take ownership of the motivation, and therefore we've got to keep control on it. Maybe control is the wrong word. We've got to keep it on a high. Okay, so the second competency in emotional intelligence is self-regulation, which essentially deals with thoughts and emotions. I go back to my studies of Zen. So Zen happens to be a part of my life. I'm a Zen practitioner. And in Zen, we always say that thoughts are like a thief. When there are no lights at home and when the owner is asleep, that's when the thoughts come in. And thoughts can be so empowering that they can possess you completely. Thoughts can be negative, thoughts can be positive. How do you differentiate between thoughts that are negative and positive? Any thought that makes you grow in life is a positive thought. Any thought that restricts your growth or maybe takes you into a decline of your abilities is definitely a destructive thought. But thoughts and emotions are linked. So positive thought triggers a positive emotion. A negative thought triggers a negative emotion. So like I said, in Zen, we say thought is like a thief which enters the house when the owner is asleep and the house is dark. Now, who's the owner? The owner is our consciousness. There is something inside of us which keeps us alive. There's something inside of us which is intelligence, which is energy, whatever it could be, that keeps us alive, that keeps us ticking. As long as we are self-aware, as long as we are conscious about what's happening around us and what's happening inside of us, we are able to deal with our thoughts effectively. It is perfectly normal when a COVID patient comes to you to be petrified and think that, it's all over. And that's a negative thought. Now, interestingly, thoughts are also highly infectious. That means if the doctor is also in the realm of negative thoughts and the patient is bound to be in the realm of negative thoughts, two negative thoughts can actually be absolutely destructive and disruptive. So the point is, the moment there is a negative thought that comes to us, and a negative thought typically is, it's not going to add any value to anybody, including us. Again, we have to just watch the thought, take ownership of the thought, and tell ourselves, well, this is COVID times. These thoughts are normal. It's perfectly normal to get into a negative thought process. And you will interestingly start seeing that that thought just doesn't possess you anymore. It just lets go of you. Every time I have a fear in my life, every time I'm dealing with a difficult prodigy when I'm coaching, I just become aware of my thoughts. And my thoughts can be negative thoughts. Oh, I think this person is going to be tough. I think this person is not going to listen to me. So the moment these thoughts start coming, I just tell myself, well, these are just thoughts. And they have entered because I have permitted to enter. That's it. Now, interestingly, thoughts and emotions. So you can keep posting your questions. I'm seeing them. I'll take them the moment I'm done with the second competency. You can keep posting your questions, no problem. Because otherwise you'll forget your questions. So thoughts trigger emotions. Now, thoughts and emotions are aligned. When we think, we emote. And when we emote, we act. But it's also important to understand what is an emotion. An emotion is nothing but a reaction to the outside world. That means, how do I react the moment I encounter a situation? And that reaction, which is an emotive reaction, is correlated with my thought. So let's say in a COVID time, a patient comes, and the moment the patient comes, my thought would be, oh my God, that's a serious thing. And it will trigger an emotion of fear. Or maybe a serious patient comes in and my thought says, no, my past experience says this patient is not going to do well. That's a thought. Aren't there patients who still recover and go? That's another thought. And by the way, these are our thoughts. So, it can happen any which way. But I also tell people it's also important to stay around with people who are positive in thoughts. It's always better to be with people who are positive in thoughts. They may not seem very practical to you, but it's good to be amongst people with positive thoughts. Somehow, in their psychological DNA, they are structured in a way that they can remain positive constantly. And there's a lot of energy that they can give you. So positive thoughts, positive emotions. Negative thoughts, negative emotions. Now, interestingly, the way this universe has created emotions, there are so many negative emotions. Fear, anxiety, stress, frustration, irritation, depression, jealousy, intimidation. There are so many negative emotions, but interestingly, there is only one positive emotion, and that one positive emotion is joy. You can call it happiness, you can call it satisfaction, you can call it anything that you want, but the root is joy. Isn't it so joyous when you see a patient go back home? That's the level of feeling and emotion that I'm talking about. But I use this word feeling. So what is the difference between emotion and feeling? Feeling is an intelligent system inside our body which allows us to decode the emotion. If we did not have feelings, we wouldn't have been decoding our emotions. So we tell people, I feel for you. We never tell people, I emote for you. That doesn't seem too good. So feelings are intelligent and they decode our emotions. They tell us what is this emotion all about. Now, very interestingly, a negative emotion is very difficult to carry in our body. It hurts us. It starts creating toxins. And the whole idea that our body is telling us and our mind is telling us is get rid of this emotion fast. So how do you get rid of a negative emotion? Simple. Either you convert into a positive thought by talking to somebody who's positive, or if you can do it yourself, wonderful, you can. But when push comes to a shove, it gets very difficult. And therefore, it's good to have a friend around, a colleague around who can make you positive. The moment the thoughts are positive, your emotions will go positive. Motivation is also an emotion, but it's also a process. And therefore, I will talk about it in the next competency when I discuss. But the bottom line here is, when it comes to emotional regulation, self-regulation, I've got to decode whether the emotion is helping me or not helping me. Am I feeling good carrying that emotion? Am I not feeling good carrying that emotion? And if you're not feeling good carrying that emotion, engage in an activity which is going to make you happy. Talk to somebody, go talk it out, have a conversation, feel light, come back. Because if you're going to talk to your patient with negative emotions, that negative emotion is going to transfer to the patient. It's going to transfer to another doctor. It may transfer to the staff around you. And that can be a problem situation for sure. Okay, so do we have questions on the
Yes,
competence?
we have one.
Yes.
So this is from Dr. Maria Juliet Macarao. Welcome, Juliet. They're from Philippines, and Dr. Vanji Handok is also there.
Yes.
Nice to have our friends from there. And because it's a late hour now, 2.5 hours behind, So she's asked, self-awareness is a wide concept. Does it differ depending on cultural environment of each individual?
So values can differ because values have a lot of cultural input to them. But I think having dealt with leaders all over the world, conscience remains the same. Sense of purpose remains the same. Some people have sense of purpose in technology. Some people have in the human domain. Some people have in the field of research. That remains constant. But I like your question. There are cultural overtones associated with self-awareness, but they're restricted to values. For instance, in India, I have noticed family being a prime value for a lot of people. For a lot of people, fame in India may not be a value because that's not associated with the culture here. But when I do work in the US, I find that success, entrepreneurship, these are the values that come to you from your culture. So I completely agree with you. Values come from the culture, but the truth, the conscience remains the same. Though when I teach ethics, I also say that ethics are in the domain of culture. Something that's right in a particular culture may not be right in another culture. So I'm not dealing with ethics. I'm dealing with conscience. And conscience is universal. It's irrespective of the culture. It just tells you, irrespective of the culture, what's right and what's not right. So it's a universal value. It's a universal proposition. So yes, certain elements of self-awareness are impacted by culture, but not the sense of purpose, not your conscience, not your strengths. Interestingly, strengths also come to you by birth, and a lot of it is acquired as a part of nurturing. I'm an MBTI practitioner. I firmly believe in the Jungian thought process, and Carl Jung actually said that, our thinking process, there are 16 types of people on this planet. These personality types come in with their inherent strengths when it comes to thinking. So it is culturally neutralized. So that's the way it goes. So I think bottom line, it's the values that can be culturally programmed. Rest of it is open. Any other question?
I think, yeah. Okay, I think there's one more from Dr. Ramana Rao.
Yes.
And that is, what is the role of self-talk to control negative thoughts?
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We are moving into the realm of self-motivation now. Self-talk and self-motivation go hand in hand. We talk to ourselves constantly. Now, what is this self-talk that we have? All the thoughts that we have in our head, those are actually those are actually something that's happening inside us. There's actually a conference of thoughts that's happening inside of us. We're constantly talking to ourselves. There's a chatter that's going on within us. Now, if the chatter is negative, if the self-talk is negative, which we tend to call in self-motivation as a disabling belief system. So what's a belief system? A belief system is an emotionally held opinion which constantly changes. Now, for instance, I've had too many webinars today, and can I happen to do one more webinar is a part of your belief system. Now, that's a disabling belief system because it's not helping you grow. It's not allowing you to put your 100% into the new webinar that you're getting in. But you could also have an enabling belief system, which is, well, I've had 2 webinars today, and I'm going to put in another thought here in this webinar, and I'm going to do well. Now, that enabling belief system is actually converting into a positive thought. So self-talk can be negative. Self-talk can be positive. It can be dependent on the environment that's around you. The more stressed out you are, the more chances that you will be doing a negative self-talk. But if you practice hard and if you've seen enough difficulties in life, I think the challenge lies in the area, or the maturity lies in the area where every time we are dealing with a difficult proposition, we are able to control our self-talk, and we are able to say, hey, you know what? This is the time when I'm going to be thinking absolutely positive, and I'm going to talk to myself positive. In fact, when I go to train senior leaders in classrooms, there are always some leaders who want to nudge you. And I know that the self-talk can start. There are a lot of patients who will come to you and nudge you. For instance, in the COVID situation, there could be some patient who's actually telling you, doctor, I'm not going to live. It's all over for me. Now that's a negative self-talk that's being transferred onto you. Now, if you have a negative self-talk going in, oh yeah, I've seen enough of people die today, it's going to transmit and it's going to transfer to the patient. But if your self-talk is positive, that means you're an enabled belief system, you are able to deal with it. Now, since you're dealing with people who are ill, you're dealing with a pandemic, which is so stressful, I have to talk about the different levels of motivation. The first level of motivation is an intrinsic motivation, which is supposed to be extremely powerful. And intrinsic motivation is that you took on to your medical profession as a part of your sense of purpose. And therefore, every time you're treating a patient, for you, it's no longer a job. For you, it's a mission. Now, that is your intrinsic motivator. There's also an extrinsic motivator. And the extrinsic motivator is typically a reward associated with what we do. But in emotional intelligence, we say that these tangible rewards in life do not keep you motivated for a long time. Intrinsic motivators, which are intangible in nature, which are very soft in nature, these are about your sense of purpose, it's about your passion, it's about something that interests you, it's about learning. All these keep you motivated a lot more. But the tangible ones of extrinsic motivators like money, reward, awards, they're nice when you get them, but they don't really leave any legacy behind in your life. They don't leave a story behind in life. But there is a third motivation that I talk about, which is called the autonomous motivator. Now, when I teach autonomous motivator, I always take the example of blood donation camps. When people have to donate blood, a lot of them do with intrinsic motivator, where they're the first ones to land up and donate blood because they just enjoy it. That's a part of their purpose. That's a part of their value system. But there are some people who delay it. And just before the camp is going to be winding up, they go there and they donate their blood. Now, what is this? This is being done more out of sense of duty. And when it is being done more out of sense of duty, that is the time we call it as an autonomous motivator. A lot of times in COVID times, when you are wearing your suits and when you're going around in scenarios which are so difficult, you're sweating inside, it's difficult to be in a pea suit. So all that is kind of taxing you up. And the only way you can handle that once your intrinsic motivators are kind of subsiding is getting into an autonomous motivator and saying, hey, you know what? I'm a doctor. I come from the medical field. I have chosen this profession and I have to go and I have to treat come what may. That's autonomous motivator. So self-motivation typically means that it's my motivation, it's my ownership, and I take the call whether I want to be motivated or I don't want to be motivated. But you know, the beauty of it is the moment you tell yourself it's my motivation and I'm currently demotivated and I'm the one responsible for the demotivation, the inner alchemy sets in and suddenly the entire transformation of motivation starts. In sports, when we observe motivation, we always find that there are certain players, whether it's football or it's cricket, they hit a low in life. When they hit a low in life, the self-motivation is declining. So that means they're getting into a disabled belief system. All of a sudden, one day they said, enough is enough. I'm going to bounce back. I'm going to go out and play. And I'm going to put in my heart and soul and I'm going to make it. And they just make it. So it's all about turning your thoughts around again when it comes to self-motivation. So that was the third competency. Any questions there? You're muted.
Yeah, there are two questions.
Yes.
One is from Dr. Bhavesh Swankar. He's in fact the secretary of our Pigmentary Disorder Society. And happy birthday to you, Bhavesh. It's his birthday today.
Okay.
So he's asked a very pertinent question, which many of us feel, that how can we cultivate the emotional intelligence in children if it can be cultivated? It's an important question because they are living more and more in a virtual world.
Oh, it is.
And one word which Deepthi has asked, Deepthi Saxena, that is there any role of writing down of thoughts and self-regulation?
So I'll take the first question.
Yeah.
Then you can remind me of the second question because my flow gets into it. It's very important that children who are born emotionally intelligent, we do not terminate that emotional intelligence. Asking a question to the child, what is it that you want to be, is a very pertinent question because you're tapping into the vision of the child. It doesn't matter what the child tells you. The child tells you, I want to fly an aircraft, so be it. Tomorrow morning, the child will tell you, I want to go and play and I want to be a sports person. That's fine. Third day, the child says, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a chartered accountant. That's okay. But what are you doing? You're making the child turn inwards and making it think that what is your sense of purpose in life? As parents, looking at the strength of the child as they're displaying that strength, whether they're in school or they're in a social circuit, as parents, it's your responsibility to observe those strengths and give a feedback to the child and tell the child what your strengths are. Unfortunately, a lot of time parents tend to tell the weaknesses to the child, but they don't tell the child what their strengths are. Please be observant. What are the subjects that the child is finding difficult? those are not a part of that child's strength. Practice of that subject from the Jungian thought, if I have to come and say, the practice of that subject may just get that child to a particular level of marks in the class. But there are certain subjects that come very naturally to the child. Those are the areas of strength. Allow the child to enjoy those subjects. Ultimately, as the child grows up, allow the child to make a choice of the career. Allow the child to choose and change the field. No problem. Because again, in the Jungian thought, we say, until you touch the age of 30 and you hit a midlife crisis, you're not going to align yourself in your careers in any case. You're lucky if as a doctor, you made up your mind to be a doctor when you were in school and you chose the medical profession. Probably you're emotionally intelligent and you could connect with your sense of passion. But haven't we seen a lot of doctors move on to other professions? We've had some doctors moving on to become politicians because their sense of
that's very true. Yeah, very
they
true.
choose their profession, which is perfectly fine. Allow your children to change the profession. I remember as an engineer, when I moved into psychology, there was so much of a hullabaloo about the whole thing. How can an engineer move into psychology? And interestingly, the universities in India don't permit an engineer to do psychology. Yeah, some of them, not all. But that's the way it is. So if the calling comes, let the calling happen. Bottom line, allow your kids to realize what they want to do in their life. As parents, tell them what their strengths are. It'll go a long way because you are helping them to remain self-motivated constantly. What was the second question?
Yeah, the second question is, okay. Yeah, Deepthi had asked, Deepthi Saxena, that does it help, by writing down your thoughts, for self-regulation?
It does
writing
help.
down your thoughts.
I audit my thoughts every day.
Mm.
Before I go to sleep, I don't write them. You can choose to write them. But I have a board here on the right hand side. It's a glass board where I always record my thoughts. I have a board in the front where I record my thoughts. You can see it in the reflection behind. There's another board there. I have a whole lot of glass boards in my office. And one of the reasons I have these glass boards is because I write my thoughts down. I audit my thoughts. So if I have a negative thought, I write it. And when you write that negative thought, it makes you understand that you thought negative. But before I go off to sleep, I do audit my day. What were the occasions when I triggered a disabling belief system? Which were the occasions when I had a negative thought process? What were the negative emotions that I generated during the day? And before you go off to sleep, it makes sense to audit this because next day you become aware of it and your self-awareness starts growing ultimately. Because another thing about emotional intelligence is whatever you give energy to grows. So if you give energy to negative thought processes, they grow. If you give energy to positive thought processes, they grow. So it's all about giving awareness, what energy you want to give to your awareness. So it helps. Surely, madam, if you want to write down your thoughts, excellent. Please do that.
Yeah, I remember seeing this very interesting opera in the USA, where they were the bad thought bears and the good thought bears, There was something happening like that. And we would joke with each other, my friend and I, that, don't let the bad thought, bears enter. They were bears actually. So that's
possibly when you're managing a COVID ward and every time you're having negative thoughts coming in and negative emotions happening, go back to your office and write down. Yeah. It'll help you to deal with the situation much better.
So there's another question in the same line this is by Dr. Deepak Shirbhate. Thank you for being here. Is there any psychological, just a second. Psychological test to test actually.
Test the
for the child actually, for the emotional intelligence.
My suggestion as a trained certified psychometrician is please do not attempt psychometry tools on children. Probably when they cross the age of 13, they can qualify for a test. But my assessment and experience in assessment says, please do it once they are crossing an age of 22 to 25.
Yeah, he's asked actually child or person. So it's fine,
Yeah, so child don't do it. Person, yes. I think once the kid is out of college and after that at any age is okay. Even at the age of 80, if a person takes an assessment tool, it's good. It's good because the bonus period of life that person may just spend in terms of improving himself or herself. There is no right opportunity or a moment when it comes to awareness. It can happen any point in time. But till the age of 12, the ego is getting formed. The brain is forming its programming inside. The wiring is happening. let's not unsettle it. Plus the maturity is not there to handle the tools. Yeah.
So there's one from, thank you, from Dr. Basu, and he's asking that in the present scenario, where more and more virtual world is entering into our real lives, how to keep a balance? We've often talked about it,
Yeah. So, one is, if there is a relationship, there is a relationship. And it doesn't matter whether it's virtual or it's one-on-one. I think we're living in a world of virtual reality since a long time. Aren't there parents who are talking to their kids who are in the US? It's also a kind of a relationship that has become virtual. They come once a year, meet up with their parents. Probably, a lot of you would be living away from your parents and you would be talking to them on the phone. Now that's also a virtual relationship. It's just that during COVID world, because you started having these Zoom sessions and, a lot of technologies come in, we've certainly become aware of virtual relationships. But virtual relationships have been there for a long, long time. They were
must have been through letters, yeah. They must have been through letters and all before.
The letter was also a virtual relationship. Then the phones came. Then after the phones, then the mobiles came when the intensity of conversation went up. Then data came. Then the telecom revolution happened. Now we are on the video. 5G is around the corner. A lot of new apps and new tools are on the way. Virtual relationships are the reality, but I like it. When I talk about social intelligence, I'm going to discuss virtual relationships. I think virtual relationships are a lot more productive. As a coach, when I used to meet people one-on-one, there would be a lot of frivolous talk that we used to get into. But online, when we are talking to the point, we're making a lot of sense, but you could also have casual conversations on a digital platform, not a problem. But I think we've got to live with the COVID reality now. And relationships over a virtual world can be as intense as relationships in a physical world. It's just that a human being is triggered to experience the world through the 5 senses. And the touch as a sense is not there anymore in the virtual world. But I think we've got to live with it. If I were to look at relationships, I'm going to talk about them as we move. There are specific needs associated with relationship. And virtual world is also capable of satisfying and gratifying those needs. That's not a problem. Yeah, so it's okay. No problem. It can work. Any other questions?
There's one more question, from Dr. Evangeline Handog, and she's asked a very pertinent question that how do you grade emotional intelligence? Is it related with success? In fact, let me tell you, Dr. Evangeline Handog, has been the past president of the International Society of Dermatologists, probably the only woman to do so.
Okay.
And she would know what success actually means. She's been through all that, and she's also kept herself as a friend, the part of a friend, away of a successful person. So that's their journey. So I think it's a very pertinent.
So emotional intelligence says that if you have achieved superior performance in life, it is primarily because of emotional intelligence. So it says IQ can get you to the job. But what creates a star performer, what creates a successful person, it's all about emotional intelligence. Look at all emotional intelligent people. I mean, all the big CEOs, global CEOs who've happened, big time doctors who've happened, they have shown all the 5 competencies of emotional intelligence. So madam, yes, success and emotional intelligence are absolutely correlated. The more successful you are, the more emotionally intelligent you are. If you're yoked in an orbit and if you're not able to get that success, there's something seriously wrong in one of the competencies of emotional intelligence, or maybe all 5.
Yeah, because I always felt that it's an important component,
Oh, it is. Success and emotional intelligence.
How you connect actually. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So there are some more. Do you want to take them later?
I'll take.
Yeah. See, there is one question, from somebody who wants to remain anonymous that, how can you convert, a negative situation, negative thoughts into, how do we convert our negative thoughts and feeling of that situation to positive ones immediately?
Okay.
On our own.
Very nice question. One thing that you have to program yourself, and probably some of you could write this down because you're going to go through this every time during COVID times. You are dealing with a situation. Okay, you're not dealing with a thought, you're not dealing with your emotions, you're dealing with a situation. And the moment you're dealing with a difficult situation, there are two things. One, the situation is in your locus of control. You can apply your intelligence and transform the situation. If you can, do it. There are some situations which you cannot do anything about. You're powerless in front of those situations because it is the act of God. Leave it. There is nothing you can do about it. The only thing probably you can do is keep trying hard. If it is going to work out, it'll work out. So I'm not saying give up. If a situation is outside your locus of control, take help, try out new things, apply your intelligence, but you deal with so many uncertainties and you're dealing with life. Things could be completely beyond you. Should that happen, bad luck. Bad luck. There's nothing you can do. So, bottom line, deal it as a situation. Don't deal with your thoughts. Don't deal with your emotion. Dealing, look at the situation, deal with it. For instance, it is 7 o'clock, Sunday evening, situation. We could have done something different. But the point is, you let go of your thoughts and emotions. You gave it as a sense of purpose that I want to come here. You dealt with the situation and here you go. So it's all about situation. So either a situation or a sense of purpose. I keep going back to sense of purpose. Yeah, something else.
So I think, we are doing something different. So I think that's why whoever's here is actually doing something different on a Sunday evening,
Yes,
So-
and you would do something different in Sunday evening only when you're inspired to do it.
Right.
And that
So
inspiration again comes from your sense of purpose.
And of course, there's a question from Dr. Rashmi Chopra. How do we motivate ourselves during a tough time? You can take
There
it
is
down.
only one thing that motivates you in the tough time. It's your sense of purpose. There's nothing else. After this talk, Rashmi, I'll give you another podcast of mine on sense of purpose. You can transmit it to the group.
Right.
I have laid so much of emphasis in the corporate world and in the social world that today, if there is a problem, the problem is not many people actually have a sense of purpose. The only way you can remain motivated 24/7 is convert your profession into a complete sense of purpose. You will deal with all your emotions, you will deal with all your thoughts, and your energy will be so razor sharp because now you're focused on one thing in life. You're not diverted in terms of your attention, in terms of your energy. You will certainly make it. There's no problem. Perseverance comes only with sense of purpose. Courage comes only with sense of purpose. So sense of purpose is the key.
Yeah. I think that's important because there's a recent situation that you know about, when I had to deal with a lot of negative thoughts.
Yes.
A lot of negative trolling that I had to face, huge amounts of it. And it took me days and days, you remember me talking about it.
Yeah, but I think,
But I just thought I'll focus on my work, but it was difficult, easier said than done. I did do it finally,
So if you are in a leadership position, you are going to be trolled. And I'm not saying this only to Dr. Rashmi, I'm saying it to everybody because all of you in some part of life, you're in a leadership position. If you're doing well, you're going to be trolled. Now the point is, either you stay on course on your sense of purpose and say, hey, you know what? I have chosen to contribute to community at large and I shall keep doing it. Keep going. The trolls suddenly become meaningless. Now, interestingly, who trolls? Now, if you see the psychology of people who troll, these are a bunch of people who have nothing better to do in life. They are people who have absolutely no sense of purpose and they have no business to call themselves as leaders. In fact, they have no business to play a role of a leader in the community ever. So, sense of purpose should be your final definer in terms of whether the capability of leadership is there or not there. But I can also say one thing for sure, that people who have sense of purpose, they start taking higher roles and responsibilities in life too. Because what they do is, they want their sense of purpose now to move into multiple dimensions and towards multiple people. So that's also a definer of self-purpose. I mean, for instance, in my case, a lot of times people back home tell me, why do you want your work to go so big? And I always tell them, it's a sense of purpose. It has to amplify, it has to accelerate. Because if you're going to contain yourself for purpose, sense of purpose, it's not going to work for you at all. There's no point containing that's something good for you. So, but that's your choice. Yeah. Any other questions?
There are a few, I think, should we take it after the next domain or something? There are.
Okay, we'll do that, but let's not forget those questions. So we'll take the next one, which is the fourth competency called empathy, which is hugely important in your profession. Now, management term of empathy is getting into someone else's shoes. That's not the way emotional intelligence talks about it. Emotional intelligence says empathy fundamentally means, number one, telling somebody else how do you feel. Please have some people around you and be very honest about your emotions and tell people what are you going through in life right now. How are you feeling? Tell people exactly what your feeling is. I'm feeling afraid. I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling anxious. Now, when you tell this to people, and by the way, culturally, we are not trained to talk like this. But interestingly, emotional intelligence would say that when you disclose your emotion to other people, they trigger empathy in themselves because they can't read your mind. The same applies to a doctor to go and ask a patient, what is your feeling right now? And when you are able to understand the feeling of the patient, suddenly the empathy also in you triggers. Being rational and too much of rationality in life can take away empathy. All professions today are associated with empathy. Empathy in emotional intelligence is supposed to be and taken to be, after self-awareness or possibly along with self-awareness, the most important competency. How do you nurture empathy in you? Simple. When you empathize with your feelings, you empathize with other people's feelings. When you resist your feelings and emotions, you resist the feeling and emotions of others also. The rationality of the thought has to be contained and the empathy factor has to go up. And the empathy factor only goes up when we become completely in tune with our emotions, when we know what we're emoting, and when we ask other people what their emotion is, you shall always develop empathy. So, medical profession, absolute full of empathy. Whether you are a surgeon or you're a dermatologist or you're in a COVID situation, it's important to understand the feeling of the patient when he's coming to you is scared. There's tremendous attachment to the body. And if something is not right with the body, it triggers a whole lot of negative thoughts, negative emotions, negative belief systems. And to empathize at that point in time is extremely crucial. Empathizing with relatives is also very important because, again, the connection of relatives with people, those are admitted, is also intense. And that's where the empathy factor comes in. I think if I have to talk about EI, I repeat it again, in medical profession, empathy has to be far more than any other profession. Do we have any questions on empathy?
There were one or two questions that were left actually. So
yes, we'll take those. We will align them.
This Dr. Sridevi had asked.
Yeah.
Just trying to. Yeah, she says that once, there were two actually from her, once age increases, old people, emotional intelligence is decreasing, but how to improve. And the other was also fear, insecurity, that's together only, fear, insecurity and observing others' disease makes them more negative persons, how to improve them. Namaste to all.
So emotional intelligence actually grows. Okay, there's no reverse cycle of emotional intelligence. I can empathize with what you're saying. A lot of times when people tend to get old, because of the fact that they did not focus on emotional intelligence and they were too rational and intellectual in life, it's too late for them to actually work on emotional intelligence. But again, life is very interesting. One can develop emotional intelligence early in life. One can also develop emotional intelligence possibly at the end of life. Now, emotional intelligence with old people, if you have to look at it, one is they're hardwired completely. So it is a difficult proposition. But I think if they start reading up, if they start reading about life, if they start reading about emotions, if they start reading about thoughts, some element of it gets in. You know, in the Indian mythology, in the ancient times, there was a time which was called as the Vanaprasthashram. You know, at that point in time, it was all about raising the awareness levels and being in line with life and being in line with the process of life. Ultimately, we've moved into the world of consumerism, where attachment to the body is intense. And I know I have worked with morbidity. I have worked with people who know when they're dying. I worked with cancer patients. It's a tough call. But I'll tell you my interesting experience with cancer patients. When they knew they had just 1 year to go, some of them actually took a choice and said, why can't I be happy for the next 1 year? And they just chose it. Now, how does that happen? Well, it happens because they go into an introspection of life. But if at an old age, people have not gone into that introspection, I'm sorry, it's difficult because at that age, you cannot change people. Well, that's a part of their blueprint of life. There's nothing much that can be done. I think the only thing that we can do is, as emotionally intelligent people, empathize with them. That's it. They know they're going. They know their life is bonus. And nobody wants to let go of the body. Let's just empathize about it and let's make it a good time for them. That's it. That's the only thing we could probably do for them. Any other question?
There's one more question from Dr. Bushra Khan. Thanks for being here. She's asked that how do you keep yourself, any tips for keeping yourself self-motivated, you know, when you're away from home and near ones?
Only one thing, sense of purpose. There's nothing else that will keep you motivated in the toughest of your times. Once you're aligned to your passion and once you are aligned to a scenario that this is that one thing that I want to do in life, your motivation is a byproduct. There's nothing else that can help you to retain your motivation in life. So sense of purpose. In most of the conversations, my answer will remain sense of purpose because that's the highest possible actualization that we can operate on. There's no other way out. Okay. Let me move to the last competency of emotional intelligence, and then we will take on to the questions. But this is again a very important competency in the 21st century that we live in, and that is called the social intelligence. Earlier, it used to be called effective relationships, but now it is called social intelligence. We have to get along with people. We don't have a choice. Now, there is a myth. A lot of people, you would notice, would have told you, I'm a self-made person. There is no self-made person. Whole lot of people have contributed to us since our childhood, and therefore we are what we are. Our parents, our friends, our teachers, our colleagues. Social intelligence says the first thing to realize is we are not self-made. We are made because of so many people. Relationships operate in 4 dimensions. The first dimension is a material dimension. There is a material transaction that happens between 2 people. It is tangible goods or money that's been exchanged. These are short relationships. They don't last for long. They're very transactional. The second is emotional need. Emotional need helps for sure because the connect between people lasts for some time. But again, the problem is that sometimes when the emotional need is not being catered to, we can look for emotional needs somewhere else. A lot of people who have emotional vacuum in life tend to form multiple relationships in life. My research says that people who lose their parents early in life tend to be emotionally incomplete, and therefore they look for emotional connects with different people. The third level is intellectual stimulation. It is a place where you have a lot of intellectual conversations that happen. In fact, your association, when you meet people, you're actually having intellectual conversations there. And as long as that intellectual need is something that happens in you, it exists in you, you will look for the gratification of that need. And the moment you have somebody who happens in your life who can gratify that need of intellectual conversation and stimulus, you will be connected to that person. The final need is the need of the spiritual need, which is all about life. It is all about purpose. It's all about leading an amazing life. It's all about dealing with tricky, difficult questions of life. These are the 4 levels in which relationships operate. Are all the 4 levels operational at any point in time? Maybe. Are only certain layers operational? Maybe. Like Aurobindo said, life is neither this nor that. It can be anything. So you could have any of these layers operating. But if there is no need at any of these 4 levels, you cannot have a relationship. Now, I find a lot of times people who lead a social life tend to only lead that social life because they have a material need. There's no point being a part of an association if you only have a material need, because if that material need is not being gratified, you will find no value in associations. You will find no value in collaborations with people. So typically, when we look at professional fields, we look for intellectual stimulus. And if there are people who are intellectually able to stimulate you, they're the best ones to have in your life, because after some time, we look for intellectual stimulus. In fact, a lot of patients who come to you, and the reason they ask you a lot of questions to understand what's happening to them, and when you give your answers to them, you're intellectually stimulating them. They're actually not looking for an emotive relationship with you. They're looking for an intellectually stimulating relationship with you. And so powerful are intellectually stimulating relationships that even a patient who's down under can actually get well, because the brain starts operating at a different frequency altogether. There are these positive emotional attractors that happen within the brain. And these positive emotional attractors, because of the intellectual conversation, start triggering a different process in the human being. The spiritual aspect is when you look at it as a coach, when you look for a mentor in life. That's when you are getting into a relationship. And a lot of your patients may actually unconsciously be looking at you as a mentor. They stay in connect with you and they want to lead a healthy life. Help them. Social intelligence in today's world is also being digital. It's also being on the apps. It's also being communicating and connecting with people through digital technology. And a lot of social intelligence is actually happening through the digital world. So virtual world is actually creating a strong bonding amongst diverse people globally. And today we live in a global world. In fact, medical fraternity has to move global because there are experiences in every country which are so unique. Having traveled all over, I think every country has its own challenges. And I'm sure even you know that every country has its own challenges. If you travel the world and if you share thoughts with people, you could be intellectually stimulating them, you could be mentoring them, and you will actually have permanent relationships happening in your life. So material relationships don't last too long. Emotional relationships, people will look for multiple gratifications, but intellectual and spiritual relationships are something which are everlasting and long lasting for sure. These are 5 competencies of emotional intelligence. I talked about self-awareness. I talked about self-regulation. I talked about self-motivation. I talked about empathy, and I talked about social intelligence. We must have so many people in our lives. There should be countless people in our lives. And ultimately, your success depends on how many people do you touch in lives. Therefore, if you get an opportunity to play a role in anybody's life, please go ahead and do that, because that's where richness of life comes in. And possibly people who are emotionally intelligent become successful because they touch so many lives. Your doctors, There are so many patients who happen to you. There are so many relatives that happen to you. You're not even aware during the day how many lives you're touching. When you get into the COVID ward, you're actually touching so many lives. There's so many people waiting outside eagerly. And once you become aware of that, that's what social intelligence is all about. But if our mind is only restricted to the ward and to the beds, at that point in time, we are only operating at a professional level. We are not operating at a level of intelligence at all, which is an emotional intelligence. If you're playing a role in associations like the one that you are in, that means you're applying social intelligence. But if you're just about coming for a cup of coffee or maybe lunches, then you're operating purely at the level of either an IQ or a material gratification. But I tell you what,
actually, for us, like, people matter, more. I've always said that, sometimes something happens. So I've always said that we don't want to let go of somebody who's having a problem,
Oh, and you're dealing
let
with
go of
life
something.
and death. Both are so precious.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, doctors don't really count how many lives did they touch end of the day. It's not about your patients at all. It's a lot about people who are connected to your patients. So possibly you're touching the lives of thousands of people every day. And that's so crucial. So that was what I wanted to talk about in a nutshell when it comes to EI. I'm open to the questions.
Yeah, you have quite a few questions.
Yes, we'll take them.
So let me take that. One is from Dr. Shanti Devdasan. And welcome, Shanti, because Shanti has been, just one second, the question is going up. She's been my student, actually, one of my best students, who's now a consultant in Kerala.
Okay.
What if a sense of purpose comes from taking care of your family like a homemaker? Is that okay, or is actively participating in helping the community essential?
No, if your sense of purpose is about the family, spend a lot more time with the family. Then you look at your profession as a profession only. There is absolutely no qualifier for sense of purpose. It can be anything. The purpose can be wanting to run an orphanage. The purpose can be to take care of old parents also. There is no problem with the sense of purpose. As long as you're inspired and you have completion.
Yeah, because that's
inside,
the other question.
please go ahead and do it.
Asus also asked that any tips of, creating self-motivation, how can you create, that
be with happy people, touch lives, learn. Knowledge is power, it's soft power. I think remaining positive in the most difficult times is about having the knowledge that you need to operate in those difficult times. It really helps. These are some of the tips that I can leave you with.
Actually, sorry, the question was that sense of purpose, how do you, any tips of creating that sense of purpose,
Just one question you can ponder on always. What's that one thing I could do for free?
Yeah.
When you get an answer to what is that one thing I would like to do for free, you've got onto your sense of purpose. When I ask myself this question, what is that one thing that I would do for free? And I would keep asking that possibly once a month for sure. And as long as it says, I want to help people win, I'm in the right profession. The day my answer is different, I may have to say that my sense of purpose has changed and I will have to change my career.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the thing, Nikit. I've asked myself, without realizing, what is that one thing that I can do free? Because I do a lot of things free and I think I know the answers,
Yes.
That is why, I enjoy.
And in your case, if the answer is coming that what is that one thing you'd like to do for free, you would like to contribute to the community at large, possibly that's why you're playing the role that you're playing the role in the association. Yeah. So that's your sense of purpose.
Yeah, connecting, talking to people, getting things together. Yeah. Okay, there's another question from Dr. Bushra Khan. How to be connected with people who have different set of ideals and beliefs, especially when they impose their views on you. And that I'm going to correlate it with another question because they're similar. That I think somebody's asked this, Dr. Ruby Jain, that, what if you're surrounded by, people, who are creating negativity?
Well, if you're surrounded with people who are creating negativity and if there are people who are imposing their thoughts which you don't connect with, bring down that relationship to a transactional level. That's it. Emotional intelligence also allows you to qualify your relationships. Which relationship should be intense? which relationship should be intimate, and which relationship should be transactional. You can decide that. That's your choice completely. I have made a choice in my life. All those people who create trouble for me, I keep those relationships only transactional. And if they create too much of trouble for me, I terminate those relationships. There's no
Right.
point carrying baggage
So I
in
think
life.
that's it. Yeah, I think you have to surround your people, more people with positivity.
And your emotions are so intelligent. If there is an emotion that's constantly telling you that you don't like this person at all, now if you can't do anything about it, and if you have to work along with that person, every time you're dealing with that person, just tell yourself, I am going to operate only at a transactional level. The problem with us is we try and transform people around us.
Yeah, you do have an inner rudder is there sometimes, the sixth sense, the intuition.
I don't attempt to transform people. In fact, I get paid to transform people, but I only transform people who want to be transformed.
Yeah.
There's no point. Transform yourself. That's the best control you have. Forget about people.
Right. One question from
Dr. If you can help them. No problem there. Social intelligence says you can transact with people, but when it comes to helping people, now don't put a qualifier. Help.
So one question from Dr. Deepak Shirbhate. Does every time do we always need challenges or a crisis to uplift our intelligence or confidence?
Challenges, difficulties, tough situations. If you look at COVID right now, the amount of innovation that's happening in COVID is amazing. COVID challenged your intellectual capacities. Difficult times and hardships makes you emotionally intelligent, and all successful people have been through hell. You cannot have a soft life. If you're having a soft life, when will you get the opportunity to apply your intelligence and apply your strengths? It's a process. But I like what Gautam Buddha said. His first chapter and first sentence is, life is a problem. And the moment you understand life is a problem, it ceases to be a problem. But the beauty of life as a problem is, it allows you to grow intellectually, it allows you to grow emotionally, it allows you to grow spiritually. There is so much knowledge associated with the whole problem as a sentence or a question or a word.
I'd like to also say a big thank you and welcome to, Dr. Hema Jerajani, ma'am, thanks for being with us today. And one very interesting question from Dr. Shubroto Chakravarti. Your discussion about success and EQ was important. You still see successful people with high IQ but low EQ. Please explain.
Short-lived success, they are tyrants who move to positions of power, but they don't last there. Nobody respects them. Ultimately, they're alone before they die. Power and designation is not a reflection of success. Success is a journey which a lot of things together. Success as a journey is not only about money, it's not only about power and fame, it's about people, it's about your connects, it's about how many people did you touch in life. So if you look at most of the global CEOs who were not in integrity, who moved to positions of power, actually did not have much of a social standing. But there were a lot of CEOs who moved to those positions. They were transactional leaders who ultimately grew to become charismatic leaders. And that charisma actually comes through emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Yeah, that sentence is important.
Prime ministers, you could have presidents, but if they're not emotionally intelligent, the nation is not with them. You could lead associations, but if people are not with you, it's a reflection, you're not there, you're not emotionally intelligent.
Yeah, because I think you've kind of defined charisma. I've often wondered, we know what is charisma, we've never, really defined it.
Charisma is a human being is operating like a magnet where there's an unconscious pull that you create primarily because of your knowledge, because of your ability to help people, touch their lives. And there is a debate whether charismatic leaders are born or charismatic leaders happen over time. Well, I come from a school of thought that both is possible. Charisma is all about you unconsciously develop an affinity for a person because you believe that person can actually help you to win in life. and that person doesn't tell you, hey, you know what, I'm going to help you to win in life. It's just a spontaneous reaction that you have. So they are magnets.
So there's one more question by somebody wants to remain anonymous. It's others too who need to have high EQ towards doctors, especially COVID-19 times. We have had enough discourses and condensation on too many telling doctors to have empathy and compassion towards patients and attenders. Many of us are high EQ, IQ and absorb a lot of stuff. That's true. You know, the behavior towards doctors actually, that
I
is
understand,
also
and I agree.
EQ, you know.
So
It is very pertinent.
Very good question. Let me answer this question. The world comprises of 7 levels of consciousness. And I want to talk about these 7 levels of consciousness, and then you will realize why the planet is the way it is. The first level of consciousness is completely material and gross in nature. There is no IQ. There is no EQ. These guys are surviving. They are born like that. They will go like that. Nothing much can happen there. You will find a lot of people like that coming, and they can be very foul with you. Because their consciousness is operating at the lowest level. Will the consciousness go up in life? We don't know. It may not. Well, the only way to deal with these people as emotionally intelligent doctors is to understand that their consciousness is operating at the lowest level. That's what they're born with. You can't help it. The second level of consciousness is when you just want to have fun and play in life. You will find a lot of times when there are patients who are, in the hospital, the relatives are actually having a good time outside. You can't do anything about it. They're irresponsible towards their patients. There's nothing you can do about it. Maybe the only thing you can do about it is maybe you can tell them, can you go get somebody who can be, who will have the time to attend to the patient. That's probably the only thing that you can do. The third level of consciousness, which is the worst one. The first two are still bearable. The third one is the people who operate out of a sense of profound ego and power. And that is the consciousness of status and power. They will come and they will speak to you brutally. They will tell you how much money they earn. They will also tell you you're worth nothing. They will tell you that they handle so many people in their lives who are like you. They're abusive. They demonstrate their sense of power everywhere that they go. Well, they are a bunch of people who have too much of incompleteness in life. They may be educated. They may have done phenomenally well in academics. Their sense of power comes from their position. Their sense of power comes from their degrees and qualifications. But they deal with people very rudely. Like I said in the beginning, these 3 layers have complete transactional relationships only. Our sense of purpose is to heal the patient and send back home. These 3 layers operate at that. But you have hope. The next layer is the level of compassion. There will be some relatives who will come and tell you, you are having such a tough time. We can understand what you're going through COVID, but doctor, what can I do? This is a family member of mine and I have to take care of. As you grow up, as you go up the consciousness level, the number of people who occupy those levels of consciousness starts reducing. So that's the level of compassion at which you will find some people. Then there are some people who are in the realm of scientific inquiry. That's where the consciousness is operating. They will come, they will question you, they will talk to you because they're primarily looking at intellectual stimulus. Talk to them, no problem. Then there is the next level of consciousness who are inventors, who are creators. Some of you, a lot of you will be there when you invent, when you create a new process, a new line of diagnosis, a new line of treatment. Well, they're there. These guys will come and they will have a conversation with you. Maybe there is a family member of the doctor and maybe the patient is a doctor. There you can actually have this conversation. And the last sense conversation or consciousness is the sense of purpose, where you're completely actualized. And if you have these people coming in, they will talk a totally different language. They will tell you, well, it's life. Do what you can do. Do your bit. Our only request is put in your effort and heart and soul and please do it and you're done. Unfortunately, in a nutshell, my answer would be, you have the 3 lowest levels of consciousness who will come and who will, I'm sorry to say, I'm sorry to use this word, but they'll actually ill-treat you. There is no remedy for it. You have such people in the society. They're born like that. They'll die like that. There's nothing we can do about it. And fortunately or unfortunately, all of you are in a profession which is all about people, and you will find all these 7 levels of people in your profession. They'll happen to you. So you decide how you're going to deal with people, either transact or engage. That's how it goes.
So there's one question by Dr. Latika Arya. How can we stimulate, I'm going to take two because they are, very much alike, two people. How can we stimulate emotional intelligence in people around us who are too rational or too logical or with high IQ, as generally they believe they're smarter and label you as emotional? And the other one with Dr. Bushra Khan, she had also asked, I think, that I think a question was similar because, then a few tips to, sorry. Okay, her question was similar anyway. So, I mean, it was around the same lines because I was...
Simple. If a person is extremely intelligent, he or she should be able to handle the most complex and challenging situations in life. But I can tell you with confidence that people who can handle challenging situations in life have to be emotionally competent. Most of the so-called intelligent people will handle only safe situations, and when difficult situations come, they run away from it. If you want to convert people into emotionally intelligent people, ask them to stick around in challenging situations. That's the only way emotional intelligence can happen and develop. And probably also read up. Talk to people who are emotionally intelligent. Get to know what emotional intelligence is. But bottom line, put intelligent people into the highest possible challenges of life. And when they fail, that's when you give them the feedback. That's how it goes. There's no other way out.
So one is this, then there's one from Dr. Saibal Sigdar. How a person when alone for a couple of months remains emotionally happy and positive,
Oh, well, I virtually live out of a suitcase. I mean, before COVID, me and my wife, wife at home and me living out of a suitcase. I think the only thing that kept us going was a sense of purpose. We used to talk on phone. We used to be in touch with each other. But I think sense of purpose is something which you can, you start enjoying your company. That's the best part about sense of purpose. So people who are alone and people who don't enjoy their own company will always find it difficult. But people who enjoy their own company are happy being with people, are happy being alone also. And I come back again to the statement of sense of purpose, which is so profound in emotional intelligence. If you're occupied with your sense of purpose, you're never alone. I think sense of purpose is the biggest friend you can always have along with you. The friend is abstract. The friend always remains with you. Be inspired. Keep working through your sense of purpose. And that's the way. You'll never be alone.
Yeah, I think it's a very important thing that, liking your own company, being at peace sometimes with yourself. I think you're very rich if you can do that, that you can be on your own also and you can be with
a lot of times I tell people that in workshops, if you find yourself so boring, how boring you are to others.
Yeah, because, that's the thing. You should like being with yourself the most. There was one very, interesting question again from Dr. Saibal Sigdar again, that how one should behave with persons when meeting in a common gathering who are against you. I think these things do happen. Yeah, these do happen.
Transact. You don't need to fall in love with them. They don't need to fall in love with you. Just keep the relationship transactional. Say hi, hello, exchange few pleasantries. There is an answer. You can answer that question. But don't ever think these people are going to turn around and connect with you. Well, if in life they're supposed to turn around and connect with you, they will. Transact. No problems.
Yeah, it may not be an interaction. It could be just a transaction, just the necessary level, which is there. One has to just keep up the superficial appearance, little bit.
Well, you can also be authentic enough to show that you're transacting. There's no problem.
Yeah.
I mean, emotional intelligence also says, why do you have to be socially correct? Because it's going to show on your face in any case. Just be transactional and just be done. No problem.
Yeah, the facial muscles are there. I was reading that they give, somewhere.
Absolutely, give it away.
Yeah. So that is the thing. So Dr. Monica has asked, how do we draw a line between being positive and practical? Sometimes the two don't go together.
They never go together. Practicality is rational. And practicality is logic. And the problem of logic is governed by your thoughts. It can be positive, it can be negative. When you come to a sense of passion, when you come to a sense of purpose, both are not rational in their own way. Emotional intelligence does talk about balancing of rationality, and I talk about it. First, you connect with your passion, which is abstract. Then apply your rationality to achieve your passions. People do the other way around. First, they look at rationality and try and, kind of adjust their passion. That doesn't work. Apply your intelligence to the thought that you have, to the purpose that you have, to the goal that you have. It's a much better way of using rationality. And rationality should be used for success. Rationality should not be used for failures or to maybe compromise on successes. But there is another thought process that we keep telling people. Don't go for lofty things in life. Go for small, quick wins. Go for the low-hanging fruits. That's the best way to go around and keep yourself motivated. You will be emotional intelligence. You'll also be rational. So keep going for low-hanging fruits. That's how it goes.
Yeah. One question by Dr. Riddhi, Arya, she's asked that, is the GMIT test, useful for, what is it? I think. Yeah, useful in knowing ourselves, or any books or processes you suggest for developing emotional intelligence?
Any tool that you take for reflection will value add to your self-awareness. There is nothing that doesn't. In fact, just going and sitting silent by the lake side also gives you a lot of reflection of what's happening in your mind. As long as you are aware of what is happening inside you, self-awareness will keep growing. You can read books, you can take psychometric tests, you can take, let's look at it. How do you make your patient aware of what's happening to the patient? You ask the patient to go get a report, or you talk to the patient and transfer your knowledge and inform the patient, all this is happening to you, which is what means this is what is happening and this is what you need to do. Self-awareness can come by talking to people, self-awareness can come by reading, self-awareness can come by introspection, self-awareness can come by taking various instruments and tools. You make your choice on what you want to do. There is no right or wrong here.
Yeah. So I think that's, I think more or less the questions that have been done. I don't know, somebody raised a hand, because more or less we've covered, the questions. And I hope that, at least it'll make some changes in our life, because one question that was there was that, from Dr. Basu, that is it important, that is always winning the most important thing in life, or is it it should be just about, having other things, which make you happy? Is winning important, or is it just what makes you happy?
Making people win is very important. When you're making people win, you will win in different ways. I would say our personal winning has to be a byproduct of people winning. I think in this webinar, if Rashmi and me, we've been able to touch your lives, that means you won. If you won, we won.
Even if, it has touched you in some way and answered some questions, or made you think, actually, even if it has not answered, made you think,
In the smallest way, even if people have won, you won in any case.
Right. So I think we have some key messages from there that, you have to keep looking, perhaps, something that makes you happy, what you can ask yourself this question, what can you do for free?
Yes.
Maybe you find your purpose in life,
Yes.
So I do a lot of things free because I'm anyway in government service. So I realize now that, why it doesn't matter, because I like doing them, So
of course, yes.
That is the thing, besides.
Of course, yes.
And that is the thing. And I think it's very important also to keep on self-motivating, oneself. Keep away from negativity. That is very important.
Yes.
Don't dwell too much on it. It's easier
Qualify
said.
your relationships. Yeah. Qualify your relationships.
Yeah.
What do you
And I
want to keep?
think it's always good to show your emotions. That's what you said.
Absolutely. Can you imagine if I would have been sitting with a straight face here in front of the camera?
Right.
How would you feel? Nature has given you a face because it's supposed to express itself.
Right.
And it's so important. And your eyes are the gateway to your soul. They speak so much.
Right. And I think, as you said, that
when the patient looks at you, your eyes tell the patient what is it that you feel about the patient.
And also, as you said, that all good leaders, who are there, I think it's not just success, it's about sustained success, as you said. It's not short-lived success. Probably they've had a lot of emotional intelligence. Maybe they don't know it themselves.
They may not know it works. You're right. They may not know, but they have.
Yeah, because one may not have identified, but when you see all these skills, you know that they were emotionally intelligent. They connected, they believed more in people actually.
Correct. There's one more question from Dr. Deepak.
Yeah, Dr. Deepak Shidbhate wanted to ask. So, what is the question? Please ask. Dr. Rashmi Chopra has said, wonderful seminar. Thanks, Dr. Rashmi and Mr. Nikit for helping us understand emotional intelligence better. Last question is what succeeds in life, I think.
What succeeds in life?
It's coming up. What succeeds in life, our goal. I think our goal or passion, yes, our goal or passion.
Your ultimate success in life is if you lived your passion. And passion is all about helping people around. That's it. Now that's the element of passion, nothing else. It value adds to people around you.
Yeah, I think passion shows also, that is one thing that, passion cannot be hidden. It's just that it's either there or it's not there.
And passion contributes to community at large. Passion is never yours.
Right. It's a shared emotion again. Yeah. Sort of.
Great. So it's 7:55.
Yeah, we've done quite a few. You had said that you'll do about 10 questions, but we did a lot more, We
did a lot more.
We sneaked in few questions, here and there, that was it. So I'd like to just say that, thank you so much, Nikit, for taking time off and, agreeing to, come and talk to us again, because you'd done it last year. And I think this may be something which may be looking a little strange at this point of time, many of the things that I've done, but maybe, 3 or 4 years down the line, this will be something that is very important, even for us in dermatology, even in medicine. Because something like a virtual mentorship used to look so strange 5 years back. Now it's absolutely there. We had a program. So I think this is something that is here to stay. Yes. This is going to be a quality thing which is there. And it's always nice talking to you. I hope that we'll be doing much more of this because you are a part of our leadership program also, which is there. So that is there. And before I also wind up, before I go over to you, and I'd also like to thank, Glenmark, because Glenmark provided us with the platform, helped us with the artwork and everything. They did not really, they just said that, okay, you want to do something different, go ahead and do it, So that was the good part, about them. Thank you so much. And I'd also like to remind whoever is there at this point of time that please do e-vote. The e-voting starts from 1st of October to 15th of November. If you want to have a leadership of your choice, you should be able to e-vote and all that. And I'll be more than happy that, if you decide, to, e-vote for me, I'll be very delighted. But definitely e-vote, whatever you do. And before I wind up, it has been definitely a wonderful session, with lots and lots of food for thought actually, and something to think about. And anything that you'd like to say, Nikit, before we...
Well, I think COVID is amazing. It's transforming the world. This is one time when we can actually contribute and touch lives of people. And I think as long as we're driven, I think we'll make it, and I think we'll feel proud about what we did in COVID. Yeah. So thank you very much. Thank you for calling me over.
Yeah, because it's allowed us to introspect.
Well, I am personally enjoying COVID because it's helping me to think a lot. I think a lot of areas of contribution are coming up. So it's a good world to be in. And I hope it ends though. I mean, this is not the good world that we're looking at. But yeah.
Yeah, but in spite of the good things, I'll still say that stay at home, stay safe, wear your mask, and wear the mask over the nose.
Yes.
I think we still have to go through these safety things, isn't it? Over the nose.
Well, again, like I said,
seven
levels of consciousness. The first 3 levels will never.
It's very important.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So we have to, still stay safe, stay at home. And thank you so much, Meenal, for being with us.
Indeed, it was a pleasure.
Thank you, the audience. Thank you for taking.
Thank you, Nikit sir. It was lovely
sorry,
listening
Meenal,
to you.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to thank Nikit sir because it was lovely listening to him. Real enlightenment, I would say, in terms of levels of consciousness, or the 5 important skills of emotional intelligence, and the important points of transactional relationships, and of course when you have to be really compassionate about and all. So it was really wonderful listening to you, and thank you, ma'am, Rashmi ma'am, for arranging such a great altogether a different kind of webinar for not only for the fraternity of doctors, but also when we as a corporate get involved with you, we also get to learn a lot of things. So it was really enlightening, and it was really fruitful listening. And I think a Sunday evening well spent.
It's a mutually beneficial thing. It
Yes,
should be.
yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yeah. I'd like to thank, because we had dermatologists from India and Philippines also. And it's been nice because it's night for them, post dinner and everything like that. So it's really, and also we had 2 or 3 pediatrician friends, joining us because, they had asked for it.
Okay.
And they are very good friends, and they were definitely, we are really glad they asked some very good pertinent questions because this was about the medical fraternity. Okay. So please do enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening. Whatever is left, please have a good dinner at home. Stay at home, have your dinner. And thank you so much once again. Namaste. And please do not forget, to e-vote from 1st of October till 15th of November. Please do it. And please do vote, Rashmi Sarkar, for president-elect. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye. See you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.